The piazza wasn't meant for cold-blooded drug crimes. An 80,000 square foot plaza surrounded by clothing boutiques, art galleries, and trendy restaurants. Real estate heavy hitter Bart Blatstein dropped $500 million to make it not just an apartment complex, but an ongoing cultural event. It was just before 6 p.m. and still daylight on June 27, 2009, when police descended on the piazza at Schmidt's in Northern Liberties. Inside, they found 34-year-old Rian Thal and 40-year-old Timothy Gilmore lying feet from each other, both dead from gunshot wounds. The news of this brutal murder rocked the city. TV and newspaper coverage took the angle of a party girl, perhaps innocent, brutally murdered in a recently opened wealthy upper-class apartment complex. Even though police told the newspaper they recovered 8.5 pounds of coke and $111,000. The media didn't know how to cover this case until the facts started to make the situation very clear. The media tried as hard as they could to save face for Rian Thal, but the streets knew what was up, and soon the general public would find out the double life she was leading. Police knew the heavily surveilled apartment complex caught something on video, and that's where they started their investigation. The investigation would involve more than 10 suspects, a retired firefighter, a trucking company from Texas, a party promoter linked to some of the biggest parties thrown in the city of Philadelphia, and even the Mexican cartel. The case would eventually take them all the way to Texas. Rian Thal is the youngest of two sisters. She grew up in Plymouth Meeting. Plymouth and White Marsh counties are upper-class suburbs 5 minutes away from Philadelphia. Rian was smart and talented, with a raspy voice and a wild side. Rian wasn't into school much and was described as a party girl. Her path in life was starting to take shape during her teenage years. She wasn't much interested in school, and as soon as she was old enough, she got a job as a bartender. After not too long, she became a party promoter. This lifestyle was a perfect fit for her, as she got to rub elbows with the city's biggest stars, from rappers like Beanie Sigel and The Roots to professional athletes like Donovan McNabb and Allen Iverson. She even knew Philadelphia Mayor Michael Nutter at the time. Rian Thal was making good money as a party promoter, but anyone who's ever been to Plush nightclub, which was the last place she worked before the tragic incident, knows the type of crowd the lounge attracted, especially in the early and mid-2000s, which was Rian's era. As I said earlier, it attracted ball players and rappers, but that was the once or twice a month big party the club threw. The rest of the time, it was low to mid-level drug dealers and the users they are looking to profit off of. The seedy underworld of Philadelphia thrived at places like Plush nightclub. Attempts to dig deeper into the life of Rian Thal have yielded little. Her family and friends that weren't involved in drugs or hip-hop deny that the woman portrayed in the media as an underworld drug dealer is the same person they knew. Friends insist that she was a workaholic gym rat who never touched anything stronger than a sip of Grey Goose. It's not as surprising as you think that someone like white girl Rian, a reported casual coke user, would find herself being asked if she wanted to start participating in the drug deals. It's also not hard to imagine the temptation of having an unlimited supply and the adrenaline rush of being involved in big money-making transactions, no matter how dangerous it is. For Rian, the reward outweighed the risk, and she went for it. This, despite her previous convictions for attempting to smuggle methamphetamine into the country from Amsterdam, and, in a separate incident, getting caught ditching a bag of coke during a raid on a strip club where she used to work. Timothy Gilmore was originally from Detroit, where he worked as a firefighter until he was injured and left on disability, said his younger brother, Ernest Gilmore. He then moved to Ohio, where he married, had a young daughter, and worked as a dump truck driver. After that, he was divorced and drove an 18-wheeler. Not much else is known about Timothy Gilmore. The family I reached out to declined to comment for this story. Rian and Timothy did business together. Rian sometimes used her apartment to stash drugs and money. The events on the day of the incident were all captured on video, and they started to paint the picture of what happened. 3 gunmen gained entrance into the apartment building and lie in wait for white girl Rian and Timothy Gilmore to return and ambush them. In an apparent robbery attempt, word of a big drug deal involving Rian and Tim had gotten out somehow, and the gunmen were there to take it all. Homicide Captain James Clark released the surveillance videos of the well-orchestrated murders of Thal and Timothy Gilmore. Clark narrated the video to the Philadelphia Inquirer 3 days after the killings, which started about 5 p.m. and ran 15 to 20 minutes. Quote, "The first gunman, a medium-built black man in a white t-shirt, jeans, and a dark baseball cap, followed a woman into the lobby of the Navona apartment building, one of 3 in the complex, and into an elevator. Clark said the man got off on the 2nd floor, walked around briefly, and then returned to the lobby to let in 2 other gunmen, a heavy-set black man in a long white t-shirt and a tall, thin black man in an orange polo shirt. Both men wore dark baseball caps. The 3 men climbed the stairs to the 7th floor where Thal's apartment was. They were soon joined by a 4th man who wore light-colored shorts and a t-shirt. He's not a shooter, Clark said. He's the lookout. 2 of the men hid in the 7th floor stairwell. One staked out a spot near Thal's apartment. The 4th man went to the 6th floor and yelled up the staircase to alert his cohorts when Thal and Gilmore were on their way. Thal and Gilmore stepped out of the elevator on the 7th floor and walked a few steps and stopped suddenly. You notice they're looking behind them, and they almost seem to think something may be up, Clark said. The footage shows Thal and Gilmore walk near the door to the staircase where the 2 gunmen were lying in wait, look out a window, and then head toward Thal's apartment. Clark said Thal and Gilmore were then surrounded by the 3 gunmen. Some words were exchanged, and at that point, she was shot and killed. Gilmore was shot several times and died near the elevator, he added. Moments later, the 3 gunmen calmly left the building. One killer even paused to allow a resident who was carrying furniture to enter the lobby. Word had gotten out that Rian was to receive a shipment of approximately $500,000 worth of coke, which amounted to 11 or 12 kilos, which was being transported from Texas to Philadelphia. Timothy Gilmore would enlist the help of Edward Emerson, who transported the drugs by way of tractor-trailer to Philadelphia. On the Friday before the murders, Leon Woodard was moving the coke into Miss Thal's apartment on the 7th floor of the Piazza Navona. Accompanying Mr. Woodard was a man named Vernon Williams, who Rian Thal did not permit into her apartment because she didn't trust him. At trial, Leon Woodard testified that Vernon Williams left his cell phone in Leon's vehicle. After the murders occurred, Leon saw text messages between Vernon and a man named Antonio Wright that indicated that Leon was being set up. Cell phone records confirm that Antonio Wright sent a text message to Vernon Williams saying, "Yo dog, we need this. This is a big one. We can't let this one get by us." Unbeknownst to Rian or Leon, Vernon contacted his co-defendant, Will Pooh Hooks, about the shipment of cocaine and the drug money tied to its purchase and a plan which hatched to steal it. Will Pooh Hooks was a known heavyweight in the streets. His bulletproof vest was a staple of his wardrobe on the corner of Susquehanna and Corley Street. Every day, he stands outside his mom's house, always with 4 or 5 guys around him, like he's John Gotti or something, said a neighbor, recalling Hooks' one-time glory days as a big-time drug dealer. That was after he finished a 5 to 10-year drug sentence in state prison on May 13, 2006, and before his arrest in July in this case. Pooh Hooks then contacted a friend named Katoya Jones, who lived in the building, and asked her to help him enter the apartment in exchange for a cut of the profits should the robbery scheme succeed. At approximately 3:30 a.m. that Saturday, the 27th of June, the day of the murders, Will Pooh Hooks called Katoya Jones to let him and his friend, Robert Keith, into the building. This attempted burglary failed because Will Hooks and Robert Keith entered the wrong apartment. Instead of taking that as a sign from God, or at least the universe trying to tell them something, they decided to come back later that day. This time, Pooh had 3 other people with him: Donnell Murchison, Langdon Scott, and Edward Daniels. The 3 entered while Pooh waited outside in a white van in the parking lot. At about 2 p.m., Pooh Hooks called Katoya Jones again to tell her to allow a friend of his into the building within the next hour. Once inside the elevator, Langdon Scott got cold feet and changed his mind. All 3 left the building to report back to Pooh Hooks waiting in the van. They told Hooks that Langdon Scott had changed his mind. A friend of Pooh, Caesar Holloway, told him that he would take Langdon Scott home and get a replacement, who turned out to be Antonio Wright. Around 5 p.m., Wright, Daniels, and Murchison entered the Piazza Nirvana and proceeded to the 7th floor to wait for Miss Thal and Mr. Gilmore to return. Antonio Wright and Edward Daniels went to one end of the hallway, while Murchison went to the other in order to box in the victims. Pooh Hooks called Murchison as Rian Thal and Timothy Gilmore entered the apartment building. As Rian and Timothy exited the elevator, the gunmen pulled their weapons and announced a robbery. When Gilmore resisted, Wright shot him. Murchison then shot Rian Thal behind the head, killing her instantly. As the 3 men exited the building, Donnell Murchison noticed that Timothy Gilmore was still alive and shot him twice in the head, killing him. All of the men then entered Will Hooks' van and fled the scene without the money or the drugs. Police later discovered 4 kilos of cocaine and over $100,000 in Rian Thal's apartment, as we mentioned earlier. Later that evening, police identified Katoya Jones as a person of interest because she was observed on surveillance video opening the doors for Murchison twice. Initially, Ms. Jones lied to police about being involved in the incident and was freed. However, police picked her up again once they reviewed another surveillance video which showed her letting Robert Keith into the building. Upon being taken into custody, Ms. Jones gave a statement to the detectives and later pleaded guilty to 2 counts of third-degree murder, 1 count of conspiracy, and 2 counts of robbery in the first degree, and 1 count of burglary. Those are her initial charges. Police used Ms. Jones' cell phone records and learned that she and Will Hooks had been in contact with one another. After police obtained Pooh Hooks' cell phone records, the detectives found numerous phone calls to the individuals involved: Mr. Daniels, Mr. Wright, Mr. Scott, Mr. Murchison, Mr. Holloway, and Ms. Jones. According to Detective Ron Dove of the Homicide Unit, over 200 calls were made between Daniels, Wright, Murchison, and Jones on the day of the murders, June 27th of 2009. Rian Thal's business partner, Leon Woodard, was responsible for setting up the deal with a Texas drug dealer, Kenneth Harks, aka Big Bank Hank, who was interested into breaking into the Philadelphia market to sell Mexican cocaine that he got from the Mexican cartel. A suburban Jewish socialite gets involved in the black criminal underworld of cocaine dealing. People probably looked at Thal, who stuck out like a sore thumb at places like Plush, as an easy target. All in all, the story ends the same for people wanting to live the life in or adjacent to the streets. Rules don't exist, and for people like Rian Thal and Timothy Gilmore, you will lose your life because of it. Edward Emerson was the second witness charged and convicted in a federal prosecution out of Texas of traffickers in Mexican cocaine that resulted in part from the double slangs at the Piazza. Emerson testified that he accompanied Timothy Gilmore on the tractor-trailer run from Texas to Philadelphia. We mentioned Leon Woodard earlier, who was Ryan's business partner in her coke dealings. The same Navona security system that captured the killings also showed Emerson sneaking out of Rian Thal's apartment after the gunman fled. Carrying his black duffel bag, Emerson is seen stepping around Gilmore's bloody, face-down body and waiting for the elevator. He apparently was waiting on Thal and Gilmore to return to the apartment before the robbery attempt took place. No one knows what was in that black duffel bag, but the fact that police found $111,000 and 4 keys in the apartment leaves a lot of questions. Katoya Jones pleaded guilty on November 10, 2010 to 2 counts of third-degree murder. She was sentenced to probation. Will Hook surrendered to police on July 13, 2009. Police described him as the mastermind of the homicide. Hook was found guilty by a jury December 1, 2013 of second-degree murder and was sentenced to 2 consecutive life prison terms. Donnell Murchison was arrested July 29, 2009. Police described him as the main trigger man. Murchison pleaded guilty to 2 counts of first-degree murder and was sentenced to 2 consecutive life prison terms. Antonio Wright was taken into custody July 29, 2009 and charged with murder. He was captured on surveillance video stepping out of the stairwell near the elevator on Rian Thal's floor behind Edward Daniels moments before they shoot Thal and Gilmore. He was found guilty by a jury of second-degree murder and sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms. Edward Daniels was arrested July 11, 2009. Police say he was one of the shooters, the heavy-set man with other gunmen in the video. He was found guilty by a jury of second-degree murder and sentenced to 2 consecutive life prison terms. Langdon Scott was arrested July 24, 2009. Police say he was one of the men who accompanied the shooters in the videos. He pleaded guilty on the first day of jury selection to robbery, burglary, and conspiracy. Robert Keefe was arrested July 9, 2009. Police said he tried with Hook to break into Thal's apartment earlier in the day of the shootings, but they picked the wrong unit. He pleaded guilty. Caesar Holloway, the alleged getaway driver, pleaded guilty to third-degree murder and robbery. Holloway was sentenced to 20 to 40 years. Thanks for watching American Confidential. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time, be safe.